Skandal, vein skandal shmei rabot yom derofirusay yamelich malchusay yats malchone ikorem shulchay bichay khoy yoy mei khoy oh bichay bichay beis yisrael oy banagola oh bismal korin
Hello everyone, we are starting a new series today about the amount of Kaddishes warranted in a minyan. And I know this is going to be controversial, not to mention emotional, as I will explain. First and foremost, the Ramah indeed brings a minhag, a custom, but it is written in the Code of Jewish Law by the Ramah to say Kaddish during the year following the death of a father or a mother. It's not based on a Gemara, it's not based on anything in the Yerushalmi or the Bavli, it's based on a Medrash that actually is brought in various sources. I'll just quote from the Rivosh. We're talking about Rabbi Yehuda ben Sheshet, 1326 to 1408 in Algiers, Talmud of the Ran. He comes along and says that indeed there was the famous story about someone that was working very hard. Rabbi Akiva felt bad for him. He said, no, this is my punishment from heaven. I'm in Gehenna. And he says, is there anything I can do to help? And he said, yes, tell my son to say Kaddish for me and a few other things, and that would help me. And ultimately, that is one of the many reasons why we say Kaddish, to benefit our parents after they have passed away. But more importantly, it puts our loved ones front and center if it's every day for that year after they passed away, or once a year on their Yartzeit. Number two, beyond what it does for the departed, there's no question that it is a method to bring people to shul. Comes along Rav Henkin and says, and I quote, Kaddish, without Kaddish, people wouldn't even send their kids to learn how to daven. They would never come to shul. And when they come because of the Kaddish, mitkarvim me'at liyahadut. They become closer to Judaism. As a matter of fact, the great Gaon Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, who died in 1986, actually says that he himself changed his attitude because of this. And I quote from the book Rav Yaakov, His Life, that ArtScroll put out, page 138. Many years after leaving Toronto, he was asked to settle a dispute as to whether a shul should specifically publish the times for Yizkor. Those opposed argued that since the time is relevant only for those who intend to come to shul for Yizkor alone, it should not be printed. But Rav Yaakov responded with a story about his voyage to America. On Motzei Shabbos, one of his traveling companions expressed relief that he can once again smoke. Rav Yaakov was puzzled because the man was not wearing a yarmulke. The man told him that he was a successful furrier whose business had always been open on Shabbos. But one Shabbos, he had gone to shul to say Kaddish for a parent and then headed for work. On the way, the incongruity of going to shul on Shabbos and then to work struck him. In other words, he saw a contradiction that he couldn't resolve. Then and there, he decided to close the firm on Shabbos. Said Rabbi Yaakov, if one could become religious from a Kaddish, why not from Yizkor? And I can't ignore that. However, it is not without challenges as well. And I'd like to bring up 4 challenges. 3 of them are what I would call general, and the 4th one is specific about Kaddish. Number 1, though a few people are saying Kaddish, the majority of the minyan is not. An increased passivity during davening, when you're passive, is not a good thing in shul, as we've said many, many times. If I can quote a Mishnah Berurah, the Mishnah Berurah says, Lo yafei enosin, it's not very nice. It's not good that people fold their talis and do other things during the time that people say Kaddish, because you're supposed to have a lot of kavanah when you say Amen Yehei Rabbah. And from this perspective, you shouldn't do anything at the time that Kaddish is being said. But I'm sure you've been to shul and you know very well that maybe the people saying Kaddish are not folding the talis and tefillin, but others are, because being passive in shul is not a very good thing. Number 2, indeed, it also, as everybody knows, is something that people vote with their feet. If you ever look at davening in the morning, for example, you'll know that once you hit Kaddish Diskabel, and you fulfill the words of the Shulchan Aruch, Asher la'adam la'tzeit mi beit hakneset, kodem kedusha desidra, you're not to leave until after Uva Letzion. You know very well that people start leaving and they don't stay for that 1, 2, 3 Kaddishes at the end. Number 3, tircha ditzibura, or time strain in shul. We've quoted this many times, and I'll quote it from the Gemara in Sota. Why is it on Yom Kippur that when the Kohen Gadol had to read 2 Torah readings, he didn't just take the same Sefer Torah and roll it from Parshat Acharei Mot to Parshat Pinchas? And the Gemara says, "Lefi she'en goladin Sefer Torah b'tzibur." We don't roll a Sefer Torah in public. Either you have 2 Sefer Torah ready, or you read it Baal Peh, like the Kohen Gadol did in the Beis Hamikdash. He read it by heart, as the Orchos Chaim says, "Mipnei Torah Chatzibur, mipnei Kvod Hatzibur." But finally, beyond these 3 reasons, we get to the 4th reason, and that is specific about Kaddish. Too many Kaddishes is not virtuous. As a matter of fact, it is frowned upon, not to mention perhaps prohibited. And I'll quote from the words of both Ashkenazic and Sephardic poskim to make this crystal clear. The Aruch HaShulchan, Rav Epstein, says, "Yesh mehamon b'nei Yisrael shesvurim shemitzvah la'arbot b'kadishim ve'kama to'imhem." Many think that the more Kaddishes, the better, and they are so wrong. And if you say a lot of Kaddishes, mizalzel b'hadrat kodesh. If you say it so many times, like, "Hey, how are you? Hey, how are you?" You don't really care how people are. You're just saying it as a means of salutations. Kaddish is a very holy thing, and the more you say it, the less holy it is. If it's so holy, you would say 1 or maybe 2. V'kvar katav, and he quotes the Knesset Agdola, the Keshem shetov l'me'et b'brachot, kamo kein tov l'me'et b'kadishim. Just like we don't say brachos in vain, and we don't say brachos when we don't need to, so too we shouldn't say too many Kaddishes. And from this perspective, the Aruch HaShulchan is not alone. In the Sephardic world, the Chidah of Chaim Yosef David Azulai, in his Birkei Yosef, says exactly the same words and even sharper. Pasta mispachat, namely, it's like leprosy that has gone and spread. Laharbot bekadishim me'od, to have so many Kaddishes. Shomim gimel psukim mamish v'kaddish. V'chozrim lomar gimel psukim v'kaddish v'kayotze. He goes to shul, people say 3 psukim, they say Kaddish. They say 3 psukim, they say Kaddish. V'have kechucha v'itula, and it's one big joke. V'kama tzavchei tzavchei kama yazeh, and how many rabbis screamed about it, ve'ein shomea ve'ein mekitz. And no one listens. It's like the old joke of the guy that gets off the plane, goes into a Sephardic shul in Lod, right near the airport, and so many Kaddishes, and he's getting crazy. Finally, he says, "Don't you guys know asur laharbot b'kadishim? You're not allowed to say so many Kaddishes?" And they say, "Is that a halacha?" He says, "Yes." He says, they all say, "Great." Rabbi Chanana ben Akashya Omer, and they add another Kaddish. Well, that's exactly what the Chidah says you shouldn't do. And indeed, in our generation, Rav Tikuchinsky, he wrote one of the most predominant books on the laws of mourning, came along and said, "She'ein laharbot b'kadishim yoter al hamidah." You should not say more Kaddishes than you need to. So even though it indeed is an emotional moment, and it does do good, whatever it might do for the departed, and it brings people to shul, it is not without problems. And so, therefore, in this series, what I would like to do is to actually determine which Kaddishes are mandatory and which aren't, and therefore be able to balance the need of people to say Kaddish with the problems that come with it.
שכל מיכוח מוסוי ליד